So, good afternoon, class. We are going to proceed with the remaining topics that we have, and then we're going to have a short recap on things that we have discussed, and then we're going to move forward with theories, and then theories on how the Philippines was created. Only those five whom we identify in order for us to simplify the other theories that have something to do with the explanation on how the Philippines was created, and also the different names that they had used in order to describe our country, and basic of our geography in order for us to know and to understand more about our climate, even the behavior of the Filipinos is because of our location, okay, as to where we can find the Philippines in the globe. So, a short recap, we are already done talking about the government. We defined last time what a state is, and that we tried to explain that if the Philippines is a state or not. Okay? What's the difference between nation and state? And that we learned na state as defined is a community of person that is more or less numerous. Okay? Wherein this community of person occupy a definite territory with a government on their own and are free from external control. Now, in that definition, we had learned that there are four basic elements of the state. When you say basic elements, having the four is they are enough for us to tell that there's really a state, or that a particular country is a state, because some synonymously and interchangeably use nation and state, and they refer simply to a country. Okay? So the first element is the people. We all base our elements in identifying them in our constitution, here in the 1987 constitution. So the first element is the people, and we learned before, as according to you, also na the people we are referring to here are actually the Filipino people, because of course we know that not all not all people here in the Philippines are our own people. We have foreigners here, we have aliens or Americans, Chinese, and so on. So basically, we are talking about the Filipino people, and that we can only identify who are the Filipino people. Under the Constitution, they were described in Article 4. Okay? Article 4 of the Constitution describe as to who are the Filipino citizens. Okay, we are referring to the citizens of our own country. And then also, the second element here is the government. Then we have also described that the government, as defined in our Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, describe that the government is a democratic and a republican state. Meaning, we have the power that is in the people, democracy, and also republican because we are a representative government. We have our senators that represents the people, house members of the House of the Representatives that represent the districts, even our mayors representing our town, the cities, and even our president that represents the country. So that makes a republic. And also in our government, we have the three major branches of the government. You already know this one, just a review. We have the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative. We have the lawmaking body, legislative department. Executive is the one that executes the law, and the one that interprets the law is your judiciary. Okay? Now, in our legislative department, we have actually two. As a review, you have now the upper house or the Senate, and the lower house, the House of the Representatives. Okay? You may also reserve all your questions after we finish all the discussions in our next meeting, and write down your questions or clarifications. We're going to have that one in our next meeting, virtual meeting. So also we have the territory. In our constitution, we can find how our constitution defines the territory in Article 1. The what comprise the Philippine territory. It's three domains, the fluvial domain, the terrestrial domain, and then the aerial domain to what expands, which is our territory, where we can claim it our own. Because by definition of a state, it describes that a territory must be definite. Okay? It is defined. And then we have sovereignty. I remember some of you mentioned that sovereignty is described to be a power. It is an absolute power, it's correct? Because it allows the country to operate and to function without any external intervention or control from the other state or from the other entity. You are a sovereign state. You are an independent state. So we have now the four basic elements that makes a state. So that's why I leave you the question last time, if the Philippines is a state. Okay? Now, let's proceed with our other lesson. I asked you to look for these names, and then actually these names are actually, these are Chinese terms wherein they used to describe the Philippines, because there are historians that encountered and they got to see these names here in some old documents or books that were recorded, only to find out that they all refer to the Philippines, our country. When the Chinese traders come to the Philippines, they had identified and called and then described our country as the land of the barbarians. That's why they named us, in their language, Mae. Okay? Mae, which means land of the barbarians, because as how they were treated before by our ancestors is not really barbaric, not aggressive, but it's somehow the behavior that the Filipinos, our ancestors were somehow in nature they are barbaric, how they behave, how they were treated, because of course the language barrier, and then they were different people from the outside coming in, so it's totally different. That's why they had described us to be barbaric people, but then they come here to trade with us. Okay, and then also Chinsan, which means mountain of gold, because they describe our country as a place where you have all those resources possible that you can find in the East. In the Orient, they see that we have the Philippines that has mostly all the natural resources that they can find. That's why they have described as the mountain of gold. And we have here Rioso, land adjacent to the mainland. The mainland here that they are referring to is actually the mainland Asia that comprises before the entire land in China. Okay? So we are attached now in the mainland Asia. This is to be explained later on in one of our theories that we're going to discuss. Why Liuso? Why is it that Philippines is a land? When you say adjacent, it's just next, a land next to another land. And Santao is 3 islands. 3 islands class, I know that you thought of the Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. But these are described as islands. If you say Luzon is an island, correct. That is one of the 3 islands. Mindanao is an island, correct. But Visayas is an island? No. You know what is an island? Like Apo Island. Taiwan is a country that is an island. Okay? A body, a landmass that is surrounded by body of water. Okay, that's an island. Visayas is not an island, but this is actually a group of different islands. What they are referring to here is the 3 islands are Luzon, Mindanao, and Panay. Okay? And that later on, Visayas came into being as group of islands in the Visayas that now includes Cebu, you have Bohol, you have Samar, Negros, and those other islands comprising the Visayas. Okay? Now, let's proceed with the first theory. Okay? The first theory is the land bridges theory. So, in the land bridges theory, if you're going to look at your map here, I also asked you to look at your map. In the northern part, you have the Batanes group of islands. And then from Taiwan going to China. You're going south from Palawan down, and also in those islands in Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, down to Malaysia. Okay? These are actually connected under the theory, under this first theory or the land bridges theory, that we are connected to the mainland and also to the other lands in the south through the land bridges. So some theories found out na there are similarities of those remains in the Philippines before that are also the same of that in our neighboring Asian countries. So they thought of our very own nga Tabun man, similar to that in the Peking man, the picture in China, the Java man in Indonesia, and even those animal remains and then those artifacts, even plants, shows that there are similarities. What they had found here in the Philippines, also found in the other parts of Asia, our neighboring Asia, Asian countries that are connected before by the land bridges. But then later on, by the period of Ice Age, it ended and it melted, it rose, the sea level rose up, and that this shallow part of the land bridges submerged. That's why it looks like what we have right now in the map. And maybe some of you thought na it's the closest theory that we have, one of the closest theories that we have. But then there is a geologist said, Dr. Fritjof Voss, he said na, I wanted to rebut the land bridges theory because he doesn't want to believe that we are part of mainland China, or even there are land bridges, because he said na the measurement of the thickness of the crust of the Philippines is different of that from the other neighboring Asian countries that we claim to be a part of because of the land bridges theory. Then we have the Sunda Shelf. Sunda Shelf that is defined to be a platform. It's like if you're going to look at the side view, sa side view of land, for example, ang example. This is a body of water. Let's say this is Philippines. This part here is already submerged. Okay? This is Philippines and this is China, for example. This is Sunda Shelf. Okay, this one. We belong to one shelf or to one platform. That goes to other countries because the globe, actually, if you were to imagine your globe with those continents, with those countries, underneath, they are, underneath, there's a platform that connects a group of countries and then another group of Sunda Shelf na pod, this another group of Sunda Shelf with different countries. So, that is actually comprising the entire globe. And that they said that the Philippines has and that belong to the same Sunda Shelf of that our other neighboring Asian countries. Okay? But of course, same claims that refuted these theories because of the thickness that are different. Okay? You understand? Again, keyword for Sunda Shelf is it's a shelf. It's a platform. It's like a plate. Ano siya? It's like a plate. This is the Sunda Shelf. This is the plate. And then you can see here, countries. Underneath is the plate. And there's another plate with group of different countries. And another Sundas. And another Sundas. Okay? And then you have here the continental drift theory. Continental is the very common theory, and then some say this is actually the closest that we can have in order to describe the not just the Philippines but also the other countries, how they were formed, how the world was formed. Now, under this theory, the continental drift, there is a continuous movement, okay, of the different lands in the call this one in the globe, okay, and they continuously drifting with each other because before we only have one land mass. We call that one Pangaea. Okay, this one massive continent broke and then created two, the Gondwana land and the Eurasia, and these two continuously they break and then creating the look that what we have right now in the globe. So, according to this theory, because it is drifting, probably for how many years from now, this Pangea will form again into one landmass because of its drifting. Okay? And that countries or continents are like pieces of jigsaw puzzle that can be joined together. So if you're going to look at your map, your world map, you can see that those part in Africa can be attached here somewhere in America. And even those in Brazil, in South America, that can be put also next to Africa. And if you're going to look at your Philippine map, actually this is how it looks like. Those continents. Yan siya. Now, even the Philippines, if you're going to look at your map, the Philippine map, you can tell na there are some part here, no, eastern part of Negros, that slide, the coastal part, it is where you can actually put Cebu, Negros, Cebu, and there's a hole here, you can put Siquijor and Bohol. That according to this theory, because these are pieces of jigsaw puzzles that can be again joined together. So if you're going to, cut off, you to cut your pictures with your world map, you have spare time, do it, and then play a puzzle. They can be put together. And the plate tectonic. The plate tectonic theory is another theory that claims about the Philippines to be a part of plates, including the other countries in the world. That in this theory, the world is made up of thin, rigid plates. That's the keyword. Those were the keywords you need to remember. Thin, rigid plates. Just imagine an egg. Okay? Boiled egg. Chicken egg. Okay. You boil that egg and then you crack the egg, then you can see the plates. That is how the world looks like, okay, under the plate tectonic, because it's very thin, it's rigid. So with continuous movement, with earthquake and those other natural phenomena, the plates cracks, and then they later on for how many years formed countries and continents, including the Philippines. And lastly, you have the volcanic theory. Very easy and very simple. In this theory, actually, there's a massive volcanic eruption, they said, and that the Philippines is actually part of the bottom of the sea that rose to the surface because of that massive eruption. That's why some scientists claim that there are mountains, like if you notice Cebu, somewhere in Gihulgan, in Basay, okay, there are those mountains that are made of rocks, coral rocks, mga puti, mga bato, because these are proof that we are from the bottom of the sea. We surface because of that volcanic eruption. That's why up to today, they were known as theories because none of them proves really which is true. Okay, and these are only among those theories who wanted to explain about the origin of your country. Actually, class, there are other names that we wanted to call the Philippines, not only this one. So when Magellan came to the Philippines, he also named our country Archipelago of Saint Lazarus. You know Lazarus? Lazarus, actually, according to them, Archipelago of Saint Lazarus, they said na Lazarus daw, you know him? He is, of course, a saint. Again. Some say na the first zombie, the living dead, because he was actually from the Bible, from the dead, he rose back to life by the Lord to show that there's a miracle of life and there's the power of the Messiah. Okay? That's why when Magellan arrived in the Philippines, in one of the islands in Visayas. We're going to discuss that one also in a separate lesson. In our next topic, actually, when we discuss about the expedition of Magellan, he doesn't know the name. He doesn't even have any idea as to what is the island. And then, it was that day, during the feast of Saint Lazarus, he found the island in the Philippines and that then credited that to the saint and named that the archipelago of Saint Lazarus. Some writers also describe the Philippines or name the Philippines as Pearl of the Orient. Orient means east. Okay, we are the pearl of the east because like a pearl, it's one of those gems that are actually very precious. It took time, okay, for that pearl to form a pearl. Okay, very expensive stone. So it's like the Philippines. And also before, here, there were those who named as Maniolas. Maniolas. And also, Roy Lopez de Villalobos, a Spanish navigator, gave the name Filipinas. Okay? He gave the name Filipinas with an E. In honor of King Philip of Asturias, si Roy Lopez de Villalobos. But when Americans arrived, this Filipinas became Filipinas with an I. And it was changed with the British English, and then how they pronounce it, how they spell it, and of course letter F. You know that F sounds in English, PH, diba? PH care, here, F. Right? PH, F. So that's why they had the Philippines. There you go. So again, reserve your questions later. Okay? We'll entertain that one in our next meeting. So last, we have here. It's basic because I know you have this one in your science when you're in elementary, even high school. I wanted to discuss lang this one for us to understand why do we have this type of climate, because climate plus also affects the behavior of the person. Their culture, their manner of clothing, their food, okay, the mood, okay, how, di ba, init kayo, we tend to get very irritated. Okay? Why is that? It's because of our location. So can anybody here tell me where we can find the Philippines? It's also an argument. There are already college students na, but they cannot tell if ASA specifically lies the Philippines in the equator. Some say, is it in the equator, on or above the equator, or below the equator? You make a guess. Or if you're sure, where we can find the Philippines? On the equator mismo? In the equator or below? Those who answered here, correct. The Philippines lies above the equator. Okay. Above the equator. There. So let's draw the line here. It's actually the equator, of course. Here. And this one, these are imaginary lines you can see in the globe. It's important that we have to identify these lines because it would tell the group of countries that lies within that region and the climate, of course. Then you have the tropic of Cancer and the tropic of Capricorn. Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, equator. This one here is the Arctic Circle. Arctic Circle. This one here is Antarctic Circle. Now, Antarctic Circle, Tropic of Capricorn, Equator, Tropic of Cancer, Arctic Circle. Now, what is the significance of these lines? It again would tell the region of that countries where they belong having that type of climate. Because those countries class that lies here, kani siya, countries that lies here in between of your Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, these are tropical zone. Tropical zone. That explains why we have a tropical climate because we belong in this region. Okay? In the northern hemisphere, north, south. In the northern hemisphere, the region that lies between your Arctic Circle and your Tropic of Cancer, kani siya, these are countries having 4 seasons basically because these are the temperate zone. Same in the southern hemisphere. This is the temperate zone. In between of the Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn and the Antarctic Circle. And of course here, Arctic Circle, Antarctic Circle, we call them the polar zone. Polar zone. Okay? So, I think that's it for today. And of course, you study because we have the activity left for you. Your primary and secondary sources is very easy. You look at the definition that primary sources, actually these are sources that were taken first hand. Whereas secondary sources, these are sources that were from the primary sources, but then they created another one because of the availability of the secondary sources. Like for example, secondary sources are the textbooks, encyclopedias, dictionaries. Okay? Well, primary sources, these are actually those taken first hand. Kumbaga, pinakauna nga documents or proof. Let's say, the pictures, diaries written by the person themselves, or anyone who had the drawing or the painting. Okay? Once the painting class was, the painting itself is a primary source. For example, the painting of Leonardo da Vinci, just there, hung on the wall, that's the primary source. But then if, let's say for example, there's a writer who wanted to make an article and then took the picture of that painting and then have it printed in a newspaper, that newspaper now becomes the secondary source. And whatever you had learned based from the painting, read from the newspaper, from a magazine, that newspaper becomes the secondary source. Now, the importance of knowing them because when you wanted to claim a theory, you always have to make sure you use the primary source. Okay? If you wanted to make a topic to be the center or the focal point of your discussion, you can also make use of secondary source. But if you wanted to claim a theory, Gani class, it should be primary source. So I wanted you all to reserve your questions and then have those questions copied for our next meeting so you can ask them. Okay? So that's it for today. Thank you. Be safe.